let's talk with President Trump's former national security advisor, John Bolton. I should note, sir, you have already blasted these officials for using Signal. You say it's not as secure government telecommunications, and that we shouldn't believe folks who are trying to make us think that. So what is your reaction to the CIA director defending the use of Signal by testifying this morning that Signal was loaded onto a CIA computer? It was, quote, permissible to use to communicate and coordinate for work purposes, provided that any decisions that are made are also recorded through formal channels.
Well, I'd like to know who put it on his computer and when, and why didn't they have another review? We've seen reports just a few days before this group was set up. The Department of Defense sent a memo around saying Signal was very vulnerable. I think the key point here is the United States government over decades has spent billions of dollars to create the world's most secure telecommunications capabilities. And why these senior officials, virtually all of whom are 24/7 able to get onto a secure phone, a secure video, a secure computer, why they would shift off of that for any reason to any commercial system. That's the original sin. Everything else after that just makes things worse. But why anybody would use Signal for any purpose, I can't understand. And if the argument is, well, they did it in the Biden administration, I mean, that's practically a recommendation not to do it. They just accept everything Joe Biden's administration did. That's quite an argument.
Yeah, they don't like many things that Joe Biden's administration did. That's very clear. Okay, so that's the original sin. But then the one that is causing a lot of the fallout here is Secretary Hegseth putting all of these operational details into the group chat. Should Jeffrey Goldberg, the reporter who was inadvertently added to the group chat and is privy to these details, should he publish them? He had refrained from printing them because of security reasons, but now you have administration officials minimizing those details being on this platform. Should he publish them?
Well, Tulsi Gabbard at least testified there was no classified information in the chain. So that should be a defense in court if the Justice Department were to try and prosecute Goldberg. They could ask for the information back. I think they know that it's classified, and I think, frankly, some of the information published in the Atlantic article was classified. For example, the argument it's made by several people that Europeans and Egypt, I think, were included, are going to have to pay for the outcome of the operation against the Houthis in Yemen to clear the Red Sea maritime passage. Now, I'll guarantee when they read that in European capitals in Cairo today, they said, what? So I think it's like many instances of classification. That would be classified until we actually told the governments or made it public. But when it's made public before we're prepared to do it, I think that almost certainly was classified in and of itself. The whole point of staying in the government-approved secure channels is you can say anything you want. You can talk about today's newspapers. You can talk about top-secret code word information. You can talk about anything in between. You don't worry about it. Once you're on Signal, once you're on any non-governmental, non-secure channel, you're at risk of saying something if you're not careful. And what I think is additionally worthy of investigation here is, was this the first rodeo? Was this the first Signal app group chat in the national security space? You can't tell from the article. I have a feeling it may not have been, and I think that makes it potentially even more serious.
There is some hair splitting going on over what is classified and under what authority or under what agency. Let's listen to what Tulsi Gabbard said about that.
Senator, I can attest to the fact that there were no classified or intelligence equities that were included in that chat group at any time.
So,
and I
so
defer,
the attack sequencing and timing and weapons and targets you don't consider should have been classified?
I defer to the Secretary of Defense and the National Security Council on that question.
Now, to be clear, Gabbard and Ratcliffe seem to be leaning on this distinction that they say this was not intelligence community classified information. Ratcliffe went on to say the Secretary of Defense is the original classification authority for the DoD and deciding what would be classified information. We've heard him talk to the press and say there wasn't classified information, which I guess would be a Jeffrey Goldberg defense in court. But what is your read there on what Gabbard and Ratcliffe are doing, kind of splitting those hairs?
Well, they're trying to cover their posteriors. I think they're very worried. I think they know there was classified information in that chat. This business about who has original classification authority is important when things are classified, but once somebody classifies it, then it's classified. And it doesn't matter whether it was Tom, Dick, or Harry. So I think what they've said, at least in earlier parts of their testimony, though, remember, this is a statement to Congress. I don't know whether they were sworn in or not, but under Title 18, the U.S. Code, Section 1001, a false statement to a government official, including committees of Congress, can constitute perjury. So I think they're very nervous, and they are trying to split hairs in a sense and say, well, we don't know what the stuff that Hegseth sent out was. And I think Hegseth's response when he was first told about this is the kind of denial that you see from Donald Trump right on through, nothing to see here. Then there is no answer to the point, well, if it's not classified, why don't you just publish it?
And so really quickly before I let you go, they were asked questions about the specifics of those operational details, and that's when we started hearing the I don't recall or the very careful answers. They said, I do not recall. These were, we should remind people, texts that were exchanged, I think, 10 to 12 days ago, like within the last 2 weeks. Is that believable to you, all of those I do not recalls?
From the people saying, I don't recall at that testimony, I'm not at all surprised. Look, I think the main thing here, these people are not going to get in any trouble. They're not going to be disciplined. They're not going to be investigated by the Justice Department unless and until Donald Trump feels some heat for it. And he doesn't feel any yet.
Ambassador Bolton, thanks so much for being with us.
My excellent reporters are back. Leanne, you're on the Capitol every day with me. What do you expect to actually happen in the Capitol? I mean, you heard Roger Wicker, chairman of the Senate Armed Services Committee. Mm-hmm. He indicated that there's going to be some level of investigation. There'll probably be some classified briefings. But will this go as far as what Democrats want, which is a full-blown probe?
Absolutely not. Speaker Mike Johnson gave the signal very clearly just now that this is something that does not need to be discussed anymore. It was something that's corrected, ignoring the fact that these are the top national security advisors in the country, and they know how to discuss very important information, including attack plans. But talking about mistakes, I spoke to a member of Congress this morning, Representative Ralph Norman, and I asked him about this, and he's taking his cues from Pete Hegseth, and he's saying, well, we don't even know if this is true. And so
there's a subpoena to figure that out, perhaps.
Right.
Then you can learn if it's true, if you wanted to learn if it was true.
Exactly. And so there's a lot of obfuscation here and dismissal, and of course, there's a lot of Republicans who don't want to criticize or get in the way of the president. Yeah,
and the question is who also could investigate this? Yes, there's Congress. It doesn't sound like there might be one, certainly not in the House, maybe in the Senate. We'll see if anything changes over the next 24 hours or so. But who else could investigate this? Inspectors General? Well, a lot of them have been dismissed, and that's also being litigated in court, the legality of those dismissals. But the Department of Justice, we know those an FBI run by Trump loyalists, and will they actually go further and look into this? It doesn't seem that way. Could the White House counsel's office do this? Jeff, what is the White House? Are they said they're going to look into this to some extent. What do we expect from the White House to review what happened here?
I mean, there's no doubt that this is viewed, I think, in the president's words, as the only glitch of the administration. So it is viewed as a mistake inside the White House, despite the fact that the CIA director would not even go that far. But we shall see what the review is. We heard yesterday from White House officials. I talked to them. They said there is going to be a review of how much signal is used. It's become, almost as commonplace as picking up the telephone to have a conversation with someone or to send an email. It was used obviously a lot on the presidential campaign. Some of these threads are still active. So there is going to be apparently a review of that. The White House press secretary this morning said that the White House counsel's office is sort of looking into some protocols and advising people. But the reality is they're going to try and move on from this and downplay it. So I'd be very surprised if to Susan's point earlier, there would have already been a special prosecutor. There would have already been an investigation. Phones would have been examined and seized and things. And time is over for that. But I think in the court of, we don't know how this will impact the president. He sees coverage. It takes a few days, but he will be agitated by this.
Yeah,
and we don't know what the ultimate reaction will be.
We haven't really heard from the president much at all. I mean, yesterday in the aftermath of the story breaking, he said he hadn't reviewed it, which seems, for someone who consumes news the way he does, quite remarkable. They said he hasn't seen it, but we have not heard much from the president on this yet.
We haven't, but he does watch coverage. We do know that. And I also think it's important to note that Democrats are not powerless in this moment. I was speaking to one of my sources, a Democratic strategist, and what in some corners they are hoping to see are Democrats withhold their votes for anyone related to national security in this moment, or vote no on every single cloture vote until Thune agrees to a real investigation. They can play hardball here.
But will they?
Will they? Democratic voters have been demanding it. So let's see if they capitulate again or if they use every available mechanism to really stick it to Republicans.